All right, hello everyone. How you doing today?
Good
Great. How are you
morning.
doing? How's it going all over the place?
We're all over the place. We're scattered across the world.
I hear there was a lot of snow in Colorado, so hopefully that's melting now.
That's true, yeah. Of course, I mean, I'm not in Colorado right now either, so but and I've heard that there's the last every year there seems to be that last hurrah of snow that comes in the spring.
Right.
So
Well, I hope it's all melted by the time I get back next week. No, it'll make the grass greener.
Well, LA is very brown and dry, so I would take green any day and a little bit of snow just to, mix things up.
Yes. They don't even know what snow is down here in Puerto Vallarta.
No, no. Just tans and the beach.
Yeah, I was just realizing it. Like this kind of outfit is very common, down here. And I just, was thinking, this is how we work down here. So it's kind of funny. I kind of have a completely different wardrobe living in a warmer environment. And so I'm going to leave all of it here in storage and then go back to my Colorado outfits. But it's kind of interesting when you start realizing if you live 6 months somewhere, how you just change. You change you get tanner, your outfits change, everything changes.
Did you get that necklace down there as well?
Yes, isn't this absolutely beautiful? Yes, they sell this kind of stuff all over. It's very common. You cannot find it in, I don't know, some kind of pearl. Yes,
Yeah,
it's
they have
absolutely
a lot
awesome.
of too. Yeah, I took my mum a few years ago, and she just wouldn't leave the store. She's like, "I'll never get this in Australia. I'm buying everything." So
Yeah,
I had a very good day. He made some really good money that day. But yeah, it's like
yeah.
unique pieces. So now when she's in Australia, everyone's like, "Where'd you get that?" She's like, "Oh well, Mexico. You got to go to Mexico to get it." So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and then it's interesting because when I go back to Colorado, I bought a whole case, well, actually several cases, because I bought a few as gifts. But on the beaches when they have the cases,
Yep.
I actually had a guy build those for me.
really?
You could hang them
Yeah.
all.
No, they're like little suitcases, right? So
Oh,
like the guys on the beaches, and they always walk around with their beaches, the
yeah.
vendors, and you're all, no gracias, because they're constantly trying to sell you. And then I've heard you're not even supposed to say no, you're just supposed to say gracias. I said, well, that's just thank you. Where's the no part come from?
Right.
And then they're like, well, if you just say gracias with a nice smile and politely say gracias, then they understand that you've already bought all these other items. We're not going to keep buying stuff just to buy stuff, even though we're Americans, and Americans have everything. We just have too much stuff.
Yeah. I had that in Egypt all the time. Like they'd be like, buy this, and they'd throw things on me, like blankets and all this kind of stuff and clothes. I'm like, I don't want to buy it. And they're like, but you're American, you're rich. And I'm like,
I know, but
Yeah.
the problem, yeah, that is the problem. When I go back to the house in Colorado, I'm going to be downsizing because now that if I can't fit it in this little Tupperware container, maybe I don't need it.
right. Yep.
So just consumerism in general is when you travel and get insight, which Sam is the notorious traveler. I mean, he's everywhere, but yeah, I mean, it's just interesting here in America how much things we buy in our closets. And
Oh yeah.
anyway,
We don't need it.
It probably took an experience like this to teach me consumerism is kind of an interesting thing in the United States.
Right. Mhm. Well, we're almost at the top of the hour, so we're still gathering here and just having a chat. So people are a few minutes, or maybe 2 more minutes. We'll get started.
Beautiful.
Yeah, speaking of, we're going to speak of compensation and rewards and architecture and all kinds of information about that.
Right.
Panel of pros to do it, so it's going to be a great discussion, I think.
School of hard knocks. That's what I say. Some of us have lived it, you know?
Yeah, and I would love that. I can't wait to hear from everybody's experience out there on the line as well.
Oh yeah, it looks like we got Daniel Johnson.
Yeah.
Daniel's
Hi,
low.
Daniel.
He jumps on so often. I always love seeing his name pop up. He's always got a good contribution to the group.
Yeah.
Right. Yes.
Great. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to share the presentation and off to the
Get
races.
it going. Oh. All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome back to, I always want to call them episodes, but they're not episodes. Another People's Strategy Forum. I know, film and TV, I'm like, another episode. So we're here at the People's Strategies Forum, and if you are brand new to us, welcome. We're really excited to have you here. This is always a really fun hour where we discuss all kinds of topics. And just to give you a little bit about what we do here, you can see in the green, we're a mastermind of leaders dedicated to creating workplaces where people thrive, employers reward, and customers love. So it's a little bit of goodness for everybody. My name is Jules. I help host the sessions here. So what I'll be doing is I will be introducing our panel of wonderful speakers in just a second. And I will also be looking for your questions and comments in the chat. So please talk to me, send all your questions, pop them there in the chat, and then I'll make sure that they do get answered. And we do stream to other platforms outside of Zoom. So if you're on a Facebook live stream or any other platform, still put your questions in there because we will make sure that they get answered right after the session. Maybe not live, but they will get answered. And we just love this to be interactive and fun. We want this to be a good start to your day. So please, let us know your thoughts, comments, questions, all of that. All right, so I'm going to introduce the rest of our panel here. We have everyone from Comp Team today, got the whole Comp Team crew. So Sumit is actually not going to be joining us today. He's a little unwell, but he is normally here each and every week. And we have Shah. So Shah's not only with Comp Team, she runs her own business as well. If you tuned in a little earlier to our little chit chat, she's going to be living between the US and Mexico. Pretty cool way to live and work. And she has over 20 years of HR experience. So we're very excited to have her here today. And our discussion is actually going to be led by Sam and Wendy. So I'll introduce Wendy real quick, another part of the Comp Team crew. And she is an HR professional, a learning and development professional. She's worked with everything from small tech startups all the way to Fortune 500 companies with managing, training, and implementing their HR systems. So we're happy to have you here, Wendy. Actually, I think you were the very first speaker when I first jumped into the forum. You were the first person. So it's good to see you back. And I can't wait to have a listen to what we are discussing today. And then, of course, Sam. Sam will be also leading us through today's presentation. Most of you know Sam, but if you don't know Sam, he is the founder and CEO of Comp Team. He brings us this forum each and every week, and his expertise lies in rewards, compensation programs. So it's going to be got some really good expertise across the board. So today we're going to be discussing increasing employee performance by offering meaningful career paths. Quite a mouthful. And we'll be discussing career architecture. So Sam and Wendy will be taking us through basically the whole process of career architecture, why it's important and how it all works. And Shah will be hopping in as well. So Sam and Wendy, if you are both ready, I will let you have the floor and enjoy. Great. Everyone.
Thanks, Jules. Yeah, so one of the big thing that we're trying to have a discussion about today is the importance of having career paths and ensuring that is facilitated across your organization. I think we're having a little bit of feedback. That see who are we getting that from? One second. So, yeah, I'm not sure we're getting that. There we go. So yeah, so the going back on the career path. So having, as you know, having career paths in your organization is something that can help attract and retain your top talent. And there's a lot of different ways of doing this. I mean, when we're thinking about a career paths and career architecture is what we call it. Career architecture really means developing the infrastructure so that you can facilitate your employees to move through the paths in their career to realize their hopes and dreams, I guess, as far as their professional life, and ensuring that fits in with their personal life too. So we're going to tell you or take you through that journey as far as doing that. But first, let's start off, Wendy. When we're thinking about companies and creating a career path, what is the biggest challenge that they face in getting started with this?
Absolutely. And Sam, do you want to share the slide deck or just discussion at this point? I wasn't
sure.
sure.
We can bring the slide deck
okay.
up. I'm gonna, after we get started, I'll bring up a few points.
Sounds great. Yeah. So challenges. Well, what I see most often is either companies and organizations have a career path, but they're not actually telling their team members what they have available. Right. So they've put together thoughtful programs or opportunities, and they're just not communicating it. And then the other thing that I see is that a lot of organizations have not taken the time to define their career paths or to create a career architecture. And then, of course, because they don't have anything in place, they're not communicating that type of, the value that they offer to their employees. So those seem to be kind of the two main issues.
Yeah, I often find that a lot of organizations, employees will simply, they expect that they need to leave to be able to get advanced in the organization at any particular, at the speed in which they wish for advancement. And if they don't have good, clear communication with managers, then they just feel like they have to exit the organization.
And definitely from the employee side, absolutely, people just, it's almost like part of our culture. Like, yeah, every 3 years, every 5 years, you're going to be looking for something else. And yet, how many people, both employees and employers, would like to have a career and would like to have a long, opportunity there, and even have multiple careers within that organization, be able to have a lot of opportunities. And so I actually think that's the desire for a lot of people, to be able to make a home, and to really grow and develop.
Right. I think one of the biggest things nowadays is people are looking for choice. I mean, their careers and jobs are changing so much in the marketplace. I mean, for instance, I bring my wife up as an example, right? I mean, she's a teacher, and we've thought of teaching as being something relatively consistent as far as a job throughout the years, right? But now we entered into the age of COVID and remote work, and her job has changed significantly. It's no more. She's not often in front of the classroom, directing learning there, but she's now doing a bit of broadcasting. She needs to know how to use Zoom, how to keep people engaged on an online platform. The job has changed, and that's really happened to a lot of jobs across. Not just due to the pandemic and so forth, but jobs do change on a regular basis through time, and we may fall in love and fall out of love with a particular career path that we're in it. And it'd be great to have those opportunities for something different, right?
Yeah. Really another thing that I see is that organizations are putting so much time, effort, and energy and money into finding just the right candidate. And then, onboarding them in the great way, and then, making them part of the team and all of that. And then it stops. Then there's just like a brick wall. You've just spent all this to bring the perfect person in and to get them part of the team and to get them really performing. And then you haven't created a vision for how they can contribute and how you can, really benefit from having them there, and, paint this future picture of what the options are.
Yeah, that's a great point, because when we think about when we bring in people to our organizations, and if we're not laying out a future path for them, or whether it's their contribution or whether they're going to do as far of experience, if that's not laid out to them, they don't feel like they have that future, right? It's ambiguous, and so they're automatically disconnecting themselves from being at that place for a long time, because they don't have a vision of the future. So Shar, in your experience and in your career, what have you seen as far as some of the challenges that providers, your businesses
Yes.
you've worked with have?
Well, I working in larger healthcare systems is a big chunk of my HR background. And for example, in one of the healthcare systems had near 60,000 employees, and a department of like 10 or 12, such as, let's just say it's like a marketing department. The manager is assuming that all of their employees are going to stay there forever. Or at least until they retire. And meanwhile, the employee is out getting a degree or focusing on, and I have a live example, I won't say the name, but moving on and shifting careers, for example, from marketing to organizational development in the HR account management space, very different career paths, right? And unfortunately, the leader is not aware that, and I do have a person that actually happened with, and suddenly there are vacancies. So it's almost like even in the smaller departments, there's a ceiling of how high you go. And oftentimes the leaders would not talk to the other leaders to say, hey, I have an employee that has a passion for, moving to HR, moving to, change management, or, project management, or even IT. And so what it demonstrates is that I think kind of what we were saying before is that we're not really sitting down and having those heart-to-heart conversations about your job interests.
Mm-hmm.
And with my company today, I now utilize the TMA method because there is an assessment about job interests. So and for example, even when we're hiring our new employee, we tell our employee, we know that you might leave in 2 years, or hopefully you can stay at least 2 years. I mean, but just be upfront and honest. So what's truly your interest in your career path? And also talking, so it's a challenge if you don't open up the discussion right away.
Right.
The challenge is really the leader's way of holding on to their superstars. They don't want to let them go. Mm-hmm. And so it really is a benefit and an asset to the company if, for example, the employee transitions to another position in the company and then has the same knowledge of that particular department. If that makes sense. Yeah. But convincing a leader of the overall strategy sometimes can be a challenge because they don't always understand.
Right. No, I get that. Yeah, I understand that a lot. Yeah. So it's good to have the overall vision of why it's important and make sure that's clearly communicated. Absolutely.
Yeah, we have a question actually from Nick. Thank you so much. And he wants to know what are some of the best practices for introducing a career framework to an employee at a company who's never had one before? How do you actually kick off that kind of program? Sam?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so there is that. We're going to go through a large framework here in just one moment, and showing how we can get started in building a career architecture and what a company can do for first steps, because I got to tell you, it's not exciting, and their first steps aren't all that exciting, but you have to build the foundation first. And then the exciting part is when we put that foundation into work. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that in just a moment, Nick. And so first thing I want to talk about first, real quick, as we transition into that piece, is just the opportunities of having career paths in the organization. Really quick. I mean, talking about what are the great benefits. So we started off the conversation with a few of them. Of course, I think the biggest one is being able to have retain your employees and specifically retaining your high performers, because those go-getters out there, they're thinking ahead, right? You know that they're constantly on the move. They're thinking about what's next. How can I improve the situation? How can I better my life and the lives of my family? They're thinking ahead, and so retaining those individuals is quite important. But when we're looking at other opportunities, Wendy, I mean, as far as of what career pathing and career architecture brings, what other types of opportunities have you seen beyond retention?
Well, I mean, this is, this is about, I mean, I think the first step, Nick, and other people who are interested in introducing career framework is really, it can be as simple as asking your employee, what are you excited about? Where could you see yourself going? And if they maybe don't have the skills to think like that, maybe they're not those go-getters who feel empowered to find their own career path. It's a guided discussion around either the things that you're good at, the things that you enjoy, maybe areas that you want to grow into, develop into, that kind of thing. And so I think it's just asking, what are you interested in? Because asking goes such a long way, and then of course you have to be able to, you can't just have this discussion and then, leave them to their own. You've got to be able to support them in terms of, is there a mentorship? Is there a one-on-one? Do they want to go shadow in another department? Do they want to, get some training? Is there, something, is there a stretch assignment that they want to try, or, whatever the aspect is that they want to work on, is being able to talk with them about actually getting that going. So I think, just asking just shows that you care. And then you do need to back that up with some actions and with some support systems.
Yeah, and I have to say that the biggest part of this is simply communication. So that, as you've mentioned, so let's just talk about the opportunities and the benefits of this. And we spoke about the retention, right? That's a big piece. The other is enhancing communication, understanding what your people want to do and what their ambitions are. And so that gives you a magnitude of benefits. And with that comes developing them on the skills, those pieces that are really driving and what they're really excited about. That's a critical piece. And within this, we learn about a person's superpower. Now I talk about this because I believe everybody has a superpower, something that they love to do, something that they love to be known for, that skill set, and then promoting that brings a sense of happiness and worth across the organization. That leads to performance, which is the other benefit and opportunity that companies can have. So
if I could make a comment also, I think culturally, particularly in larger companies, there's an issue culturally with siloed departments, right? Mm-hmm. And siloing is a big problem. And I think when like those examples about shadowing and talking to other leaders and asking what kind of talent needs they're looking for, then also talking to your employees about where their aspirations are, that is a community of, or all the leaders really understanding their talent together and learning from each other about their opportunities. And that really just breaks down those siloed processes in big companies.
Mm-hmm. Great. So let's get to the point about the process, though. I mean, we've talked about some of the challenges and opportunities. Let's go into a little bit of the process and how to make this happen in your organization. And so one of the most important things, if we look at how to put a career architecture in place and develop career paths for your organization, the first thing was of course, like any particular process, is we need to understand what the current state is. What is the culture of the organization? What is the makeup of the people that we have? What are they trying to accomplish? What do they value? And what is their age and the demographic, and where are they located across the globe, and those cultural norms? We need to know that as a foundation. And we also need to know the ability of the company to support a certain administrative infrastructure. Do they have managers that are skilled? Do they have an HR department that can support the organization, or are they run very lean? This current state and their ability to adapt in the future, or what they plan on having after they roll out career architecture, is going to totally determine on the type of process or program that you can facilitate in the organization. Is it going to be really lightweight, or is it going to be something that's robust and that's going to be detailed, that's going to give maximum impact? So that's the first stage that you need to take as an HR leader out there, or if you're a CEO, you need to assess that current state. What can we handle? And then we're going in, and we can jump into each of these in a little bit more detail. But then you go into the design and the framework, and understanding what's going to work in that particular environment. And then we have to go through the job analysis. The job analysis means we need to know what jobs are across the organization and what levels those jobs are. We need to know what the competencies, such as the knowledge, skills, and abilities that are required for each of those, and the behaviors that are required for those roles as well, so we can develop people to aspire into those positions. And so once we have that basic infrastructure and idea together, I typically would recommend at that point, you're going to go to the rest of your leaders, or if you're an HR professional, you're going to go to your leadership team and propose your idea, and make sure that you get good buy-in across this, because the important part here is that this is going to impact not only the company, but everybody's job and in the organization. And we need to make sure that there's a good comfort level about how you're going to go about this in the organization. So we don't want to be disruptive. We want to be able to allow the company to grow in that perspective. And so once we get that approval, then we're going to go into developing that administrative infrastructure to be able to roll that out. Now, this has to do with making sure that you're putting your coaching materials together, you're building your personal development plans and things like this, and you're getting it ready for launch. But we're going to talk about all of these phases in a little bit more detail here. And so, but from a high level, this is what we need to do. So let's go to the next thought here, and then we can dive into each one of these pieces overall. So the first piece here, I'm going to keep my slides from advancing, is to identify that overall business structure, and I think we kind of dove into this in a great deal of way. But we need to understand what we can handle, and then also start defining our jobs, understanding what many companies out there, they have job descriptions, and so they have an understanding of what they are, but it's rare that you'll ever find a job description that are up to date, or that really track the job from a level of what you need for coaching. So Charlie, and I know that in these larger organizations you've worked with, as far as developing people and understanding the contents of the job, how have they done this in those organizations to ensure people understand the job that they're in, and perhaps the next level up and what is required for that next level up?
Well, I first just want to say a quick comment, and then I'll answer that question. Oftentimes, there is a lack of identifying the business structure and the business need in the organization, and the immediate jump to thinking of the people, which I know that sounds negative. I think that sometimes you need to look above the tree and really look at your organizational structure and say, what do we need? Not just because we like George. we like George, but let's look at what we need before we jump to say that George has this particular position. Okay, so I just want to make that clarification. I often have to remind that to my leaders, and I see Daniel's making a lot of comment about the senior management team, and it is critical to have that conversation, remind the senior management team about the business structural and the structural needs and the talent needed to fill those gaps. So that really is going to be the first step. So I think that it's important, sitting at that senior management table, to constantly have the talent and the business structural talent needs every time you meet with your senior management team.
Mm-hmm.
So that is part of the culture of talking about it. And then what you do is also work with your leaders to have that same thought mindset. We're hiring for the talent for the business structure, and to sometimes remove the name. So I think I made that point. Once you do it, identify the correct talent. I actually worked with you, right, Sam, last couple of years ago on a particular project, and there were actually some new positions that were kind of different, and or maybe higher or lower than what was in a current state, meaning from a pay perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So the communication can be delicate, but then you also have to identify, okay, well, there's a communication plan, that's transparency, honesty. And when I think your question was jumping to development, right? So with that, I mean, obviously it is a multifaceted process. So you have to surround the employee with all, like I think what Wendy already mentioned, all the different developmental processes, which includes your learning management system, but that's not the only way you train and develop. I think actually having informational interviews with the other leader or the leaders of a position you're interested in is also very important. And actually setting the stage, HR, talent management, and the current leader and the new leader to be able to talk about the informational interview, to talk about the developmental needs that that employee needs to start developing on.
Mm-hmm.
And then also the fact that we are now in a high technology space. So it needs to be just in time. I would say a lot of our employees nowadays are on these little devices, and many devices. So it needs to be just in time, utilizing the most newest technology. And I would also say that it's quick and easy and understandable. And Wendy is a pro at building that kind of learning. And so we are actually doing that with my employees right now through a learning portal. And it's not something that's going to take a week-long seminar at some conference room where the employee or leader is bored to death. It's something that they can use right in their palm and learn the developmental activities for that particular position. So for example, I mentioned the TMA career coach app, and there's actually recommended developmental activities by competency that the employee can utilize. So we're actually utilizing that. So we're actually able to see if somebody wants to move into phlebotomy, for example, someday, or get into biotech, that we actually have real life developmental activities at your fingertips that are actually recommendations. And what we do is have the leader buy into that, use that app and say, oh, you want to be a phlebotomist someday. Well, I know you work in this job that doesn't seem like it's connected to phlebotomy, but how can we help you get to your overall goals? So that's a mouthful.
Yeah.
But it's a complex process, but I think having somebody that has experienced it and has accomplished it successfully and actually can show the return on investment of connecting the business strategy to the developmental processes with a career architecture change. It's a very complex process, but if we can break it down into bite-sized pieces that is not so it's not so overwhelming, and having easy tools like this, easy tools that make it easier for not only senior leaders, senior management team, and the frontline leaders is the key. It's the magic that makes it happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been able to
Yeah,
accomplish it with my company. We've actually just boomed in 2020 and 2021. My company is growing, and I think a lot of it relates to our talent management strategy and the tools that we're using to get there. Yes, Wendy, you had a comment.
Oh, well, Daniel's making a great point on the chat, which is that, you know, he's been a leader for 40 years, both experiencing with management support and lack of management support. And then even if they have advanced technology, you know, that that having it's an uphill struggle to get HR input and to get that senior buy-in, and really that is so key. And so what I think of when I think about how do you get senior support, but I want to ask I want to ask you and Shar and Sam, is, you know, what does senior management care about? They care about the bottom line, don't they? They care about the success of the company. They care about the performance. Okay, not all. That was a stereotypical comment. I retract. How about these leaders that maybe you don't have support from, you know, and how to get that? So one thing might just be thinking about, hey, if we know, and that's the whole topic for today, that having this career architecture in place is going to lead to higher performance, you know, and ultimately that's going to be not only better for our employees who we do care about, but also for the business. And so, you know, being able to come from that very powerful, you know, this makes sense for our business, to me seems like one good angle. What are you thinking, Sam?
Well, and that's exactly the point. So what's mentioned is to ensure you get buy-in. That's why it's so important to understand the current state of your business and what it can support. Because a lot of times companies will hire a consultant, or that they'll bring a out-of-the-box solution that's not the right fit for your company. And it doesn't take hold because it's either too hard to administer or it's not connecting with the employee base based on their culture or philosophy. So to ensure that this is going to work, you got to make sure that you're rolling this out appropriately. You're having something that's lightweight that your company can get their arms around and be able to use and see the benefits right away. And a lot of this is simply having those important conversations. I mean, there's no technology solution out there that is going to say, you know, that's going to fix all of this. I mean, managers have to do their job and they have to have a conversation with their employees, and mentors need to mentor and so forth. I mean, that's where that conversation brings the awareness of what our people want to do, what they expect out of their career, where they want to go. These are things that a manager needs to find important, because this will determine whether that employee is going to be happy, if they're going to be here tomorrow or the next day or the next day.
Well, thank you, Sam. And here's my opinion also on this topic. It is not one department's job to be the people leader. It is not HR's job to be the people leader. Every leader in the organization, starting at the very top, is a people leader, is part of the people strategy. And so when you say about buy-in, you have to make it a performance expectation of that leader that you also are a people leader, which means you need to understand the talent management strategies at all levels, from acquisition, onboarding, development, offboarding, and career mobility. And if your leader is not a good people leader, a coach, I would say, that is a performance problem. So, you know, in fact, that's exactly what we're doing with my company right now. It's not just the number of widgets, as I like to say, that each department is producing or each employee or leader is producing. It's also their coaching skills, their ability to be a people leader, and their ability to positively help their team in all aspects of talent management. And when it's review time for that leader, if we see high turnover, if we see the fact that inability to retain top talent, we see many employee relations issues, and there are real numbers around employment law cases. And if you have a particular department leader that you're constantly seeing all of those problems, then that's going to be measured. So I sat at the executive table many times in my career. And you're right, I've actually argued with the executive leadership about the importance of you are also part of, I hate to say you're part of HR, but you definitely are part of the talent management strategy as it relates to business. Because I know most people hate HR. I hate to say it that way, but it's true. And so really getting their buy-in that this is part of all of our fabric, all of us are accountable for this. How can I help you be a great people leader, senior management team? How can I help you be a great people leader, director, manager, So, and you're right, it is not a technology thing, although that's one tool. It is a face-to-face, crucial, authentic, real conversation at all levels. And you have to be able to sit in their environments, in their office, or hopefully not in their office, in the actual work environment, and
Right.
have that heart-to-heart conversation. And it's tough. In fact, in May, I'm going to be doing just that. First, I'm going to have a meeting with each of the managers, face-to-face, eyeball to eyeball, and then we're talking about their talent strategy. We're putting it on our talent management plan. Then I am now aligning it to our business strategy, every single aspect. And I will be talking to every single person in my company.
Yeah, so that's a good point. And I think what you pointed out, Shar, is what I see is one of the biggest failing in smaller companies is that their managers are spending so much time doing production work that they're not managing and creating these conversational opportunities, these development opportunities for the people that they oversee. And so that's one of the biggest areas.
Well, and there really needs to be a concrete plan, which I know the slides that you're going to get into really get into that. But you have to get away from your desk. You have to get out of your office. And I know that's cliche, and we've been hearing that over and over and over again. I think it's even harder now that we have moving to more of a remote workforce environment. And it's tough, even though I do Zoom calls directly with each of my employees and managers. It's kind of a challenge right in this day of age to have that personal one-on-one connection and conversation with your team. So it's incredibly important to figure that out. And I do believe, and sometimes you need somebody that can look over the trees or over being in the midst of the organization. Sometimes it is helpful to get an expert that is not so closely connected with the company.
Right. So let's back up and talk about what we meant by diagnosing the overall company. And we've talked about all these factors, and I think one of the great ones that was brought up as far as is making sure you have that executive sponsorship. That's having a climate to where it's going to make this successful is critical. So, but there's a lot of pieces here of just research that needs to happen. So making sure you get the current job documentation. Do you know the knowledge, skills, and abilities that are required for each position? Do you know the behavioral competencies? Do you understand do you have a job structure? When I say job structure, it's something that says, okay, do we have our organization built by function and sub-function, such as we know that, for instance, if we're looking at HR, we know the sub-functions that fall under HR. If we're looking at engineering, we know what the career paths that are available under engineering. Now, I know I'm showing an example here for a large company that's built out that shows the career architecture and functions and sub-functions that we're looking at a dual career path, and a dual career path means that you can grow as an individual contributor and you can grow as a manager in separate tracks. You're not forced to go from an individual contributor to a manager to be able to continue to grow your career. This is frankly how we've gotten a lot of bad managers in the past, because we put people into a role that they don't want to be in. And so the dual career path idea came out, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago or more, 15 years ago probably now, as far as in an emerged in the technology area, to really highlight the fact that some people just want to become experts, in their particular role. They want to be an expert in that, and they don't want to manage. They want to be an individual contributor. So when you're designing your career architecture, it's important to take those elements into consideration. If what your company feels about the talent philosophy there.
Yes, and I would say this is a very complex example for a larger company. But I would say even in a small company, so my company is about 25 employees right now, and it's still moving. I actually had my idea of who our future leaders were going to be in our company. And if it wasn't for the TMA process assessment and the heart-to-heart conversation, for example, with one of my employees, I learned she was not comfortable in her role, nor did she want to be a manager. And it was one of those conversations. I thought you wanted to be a manager. I mean, and I thought you would make an excellent manager. She goes, I would rather support all the leaders. I would rather be the go-to person. And so we are now developing her to be our executive assistant. And we have conversations with this employee. Well, her name's Melissa. I'll just say her name. And she's just absolutely to the moon. She says, I just love being the wind under the wings of being an executive assistant, not only to the owners of the company, but for every single leader, and being able to connect the dots. And if we didn't have that conversation and you just promoted me to manager of this location, she goes, I would have left. But she said to me, now I believe that I work for the best company and the best leaders ever. And I love what I do every day. And the fact that you're giving me challenging assignments and helping to develop me is making me realize I'm working with a great company. So now, and looking back at my former life as a more of a corporate HR person, it's interesting to be a former HR person and now a real business owner. Really accountable for the bottom line. And actually now I could think back of all those that we lost so many employees left those companies. I was able to get with one healthcare system the turnover rate for the nurses down to 11%, and typically the nurses are about 22% nationally. But we couldn't do that until we could have that crucial conversation with that leader to say, we have to retain your talent. So, there's high turnover in this department. So what is it that, George is good at, so it takes time to really create a high employee engagement and have a talent management strategy and be able to teach the leader of why you need to be invested in this, and help that employee transition, like the Melissas of the world, transition into that kind of new future position. So it can matter for big companies or small companies.
Great. Yep. So Wendy, I wanted to I know that you've done career architecture in some companies are currently in a process right now and doing the job analysis and competency mapping. So can you tell us what that looks like?
Well, first I just want to say what I love about going through that process is it feels good for the leaders to go through this process too, because they are like, oh, we're doing something good for our people. And also we're getting clarity, because up until now, you don't have anything defined. You have your people coming to you saying, I want a promotion, I want a title, I want this, and then it's like, you don't really have a standard of how you handle it. Or you've got people who just think they are doing all the right things, and maybe in your mind's eye, you're not seeing what you want to see, and because you haven't laid it out. And so having transparency, having some standards, if you will, where you just step back for a second. It doesn't even take that much time to think about what are the critical things that we need for someone at this level in this job? Or if they want to move up, if that person, you know, wants to go manager track or wants to stay individual contributor professional track, you know, you've just stepped back for a second as a leader and said, I know someone's ready for the next step when I see this kind of behavior. And when you line it out like that and you kind of whittle it down, because we whittle it down, there might be lots of things you're looking for and that are important, but on a scale of critical to, you know, important, you know, very important, you know, if we really narrow down what we say is critical. And so to be able to tell your teams, hey guys, this is the essence of what we need, you know, that just, I feel like it just creates so much trust both ways. And your teams feel so good that you've taken the time to line it out, and then they feel good because they know, oh, this is what I need to do. This is what I need to work towards. This, I'm not good in this area. I need to develop in this area, you know, or to Shar's point, maybe someone who, gosh, has a talent for something, but doesn't have an interest. So you don't want to develop them, or they have an interest, but maybe they don't have the talent, you know?
Yeah.
So that's why I love going through that process, because this is not just for the team members. This is great for the leadership too. It really creates a lot of good vibes in the organization to do this work.
Yeah, that was interesting. What you just said is that they may have the interest, but not necessarily the talent. And I'm a firm believer that a lot of people can operate and become good at something if they try, even, you know, even if it's not necessarily a talent. But the thing is that we have to realize as owners and leaders is that sometimes you know, when a person is doing something that they're not necessarily skilled in, and it's quite difficult for them to, for instance, if you're deathly afraid of public speaking, right? You can overcome part of that, but perhaps it may never be your strong suit, you know, to be up in front of an audience and doing public speaking. And if that's a requirement of the job, it's going to take a lot out of that individual to be able to perform that role. And so you have a choice in that particular situation. If you're a small company, a lot of times what they do individualized job crafting, right? And they'll perhaps take that piece out of that particular individual's job description, and or another team member can shore up that particular area that has that skill set. But it's a little bit more difficult to do that consistently in larger companies, especially when we're talking about, you know, and my expertise when it comes to making sure there's fair pay and so forth. I mean, that kind of disrupts the comparable worth equation when you're talking about matching jobs together. So doing some crafting like that can cause some complications in your structure in larger firms. But anyway, that's a little bit of a digression. Go ahead, Wendy. You had something to say on that?
Well, I was just going to say, so once you have the competencies defined and you have the levels figured out, then Nick was asking earlier about, like, how do you introduce that at a company? And I said, you know, you have a conversation. And I think there's different parts of the conversation. One part is, hey, what do you want to do? What are you interested in? And then the second part of the conversation is, as a leader, you might share, like, this is how I see our department growing, and I'm actually looking for someone in this role. You know, would that be something you might be interested in? If so, here's what do we need to do to get you there, you know? But then there's other pieces that honestly can make the conversation just so much more productive when we're talking about talents, is using assessment tools. So these assessment tools can give us a lot of information about your talents, your interests, and how you learn. You know, and so when we put together this development plan, we can use data to ensure your success.
Mm-hmm.
And what I was going to say about using assessments is one of our other colleagues, who will remain anonymous, not on the call today, but you know, she had a talent assessment done, and to your point, she was in a role that she was very good at. She was a trainer, And so she was up in front of people all day, every day, and it was a very external facing role. And she did one of these assessments and discovered that she was literally doing a 180-degree flex every day because she's actually introverted. And so to be outward and presenting and being in front of people all day, every day, she would get home and be exhausted at night. Said she would be in bed by 8 o'clock asleep. And so even though she was good at it, and even though, we all thought she was amazing, once she saw her assessment, it actually gave her the freedom to choose something else. And so she moved into human resource information systems, and she got into spreadsheets and analysis and technology, and she was thriving because she could put her earbuds in, she could get her work done. And what's also anecdotally interesting? She is not in bed at 8 o'clock these days because she's engaged in her work. She's not exhausted by it. So I just throw that out because these assessments, I think, are so huge because sometimes people just maybe they know inside what's going on, but somehow having that scientifically validated survey result kind of gives you permission to be your true full self. And then you can perform and you can bring your full self to work.
That's right. And having those, and we were talking, I think last week, was it Shar, that assessments can be kind of scary in the United States. And some employees feel like there's a right and a wrong, and that for somehow if they take this and they answer the test wrong, that it could be hurt their job. And I would have to say that that's the reason why we were big fans of the TMA method assessments, because they are based on positive psychology, which there is no wrong answer. It's basically just based on your work preferences in which you excel at. So to Wendy's point, which she said earlier, is that we can help discover the passions of our employees and what may really be their true career, what they would really thrive at and enjoy, and it may be completely hidden to them. And so this is a way that we can really drive performance in our organizations, and by doing this discovery.
Well, I just want to make a quick comment because I do know that we're starting to approach the end of our time here. First, I just want to say we need to get back to the basics of, a lot of times leaders don't even know what the word competency means. And I remember that experience with one of my vice presidents that had sat down with me and said, we need to build the competency of business acumen. And I need business acumen across this entire organization. Every employee needs to have an IDP, individual development plan on business acumen. And I said, well, does everyone know what business acumen means? And two, does everyone know what the word competency means? And to most employees and leaders, it sounds like a bunch of corporate blah, blah, blah. I always say that. So I think it's a very important thing to simplify. What does competency mean? What does talent mean? What does drives? And then what exactly is this competency you want me to develop? And luckily I was able to create a phenomenal plan to address that particular competency problem. But I think we need to get back to the fundamentals of defining exactly what we're trying to do.
Good point, Shar. So I know, as Shar pointed out, we are getting to the top of the hour. So I do want to recognize our sponsor, TMA, and also our Nordic partners are putting on a special workshop. And so and all are free. This is free to attend. You just need to go ahead to, and basically down here on the slide says tmanordic.com events. And you'll have the opportunity to hear Claire and Ted speak about the TMA method and how it can be utilized in a consulting or coaching environment. So we encourage you to do that. So Jules,
they're great. Don't miss it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's a good one. So Jules, tell us, do we have any other questions that came from the audience that we need to address here?
And nothing last minute popped up. We pretty much answered everything as we went through. And Daniel, thank you for all your commentary. This is what we love. We love hearing from you all. We always love and appreciate comments and your personal experiences as well, because I think that's what really strengthens these sessions. It's just good to know like where everyone else is coming from and what they've experienced for themselves. So no other questions, but I love this. This was such a great session today. Wendy, Shah, Sam, thank you so much. There was so many golden nuggets here. I was like taking notes as I always do, as you know. And I loved Wendy's point at the very beginning when you just said, start with asking, what are they excited about? And having that lead to that guided discussion, because I think we see it so much that people just don't even like, people thrive on purpose. If they don't have a purpose, that's when they start to be a little miserable, because they're doing something, they don't know why they're doing it, they're maybe not as good at it, and then they end up hating it, and then that comes out, and that's not a good addition to any workplace, right? So just helping them find like that purpose, because like you mentioned as well, when that girl shifted into another position, it was like night and day. She came alive because she had that purpose. So I really love this, and I hope everyone got a lot of great value out of this today, and it's something that you can implement into your own workplaces and businesses. And then I'm going to actually just stop talking, because I love to talk too much, don't I? Let's chat about, I just get excited. I learned so much from these for myself as well. So I really hope everyone enjoyed today's session. Next week, we will be back with Gary Barnes. He'll be our speaker talking to us. The topic will be leadership beyond the numbers. I know, Sam, if you want to add anything to what we'll be diving into.
Yes, well, I have to say, first thing is Gary is a phenomenal speaker. We've had him on the show here several times in the past. And so he's a phenomenal individual who has suffered and grown a lot in his own personal life, and has come out with a great amount of expertise and life lessons for leaders, and how to pursue, as we were beyond the numbers, as we mentioned here. So what does that mean? It's looking at the humanistic side of leadership. Now, there's the part that we have to think about of driving the business and getting those results and hitting our objectives and so forth. But this really comes by harnessing our people, and people, as we know, are complex individuals by nature, and we need to know the different sides and how to motivate and engage those individuals. And so we're going to be talking about some of those concepts next week.
Beautiful.
Hey, Sam, could we get the address again for the TMA Nordic event?
Oh, absolutely.
I just didn't want to misspeak what the address was.
So it's right
here
in
the chat.
Yeah, bottom of the screen.
TMAnordic.com/events. Okay.
There you go. Good.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Sounds exciting.
Thank you, Absolutely. Susan, for asking for that again. Yeah, I wouldn't. I know those guys pretty well. They're great.
Beat me to it.
Well, I have to say thank you for everybody for attending today. It was a great conversation and loved it. Thank you so much, Wendy, for sharing your knowledge, and Shar for your experience. So, and Jules, of course, the wrap up you did on just a few minutes ago, I think it expresses all of our listeners and why it's so important. So thank you so much.
Yes, thank you all.
Communicating. Let's I think was it Susan? Yeah. Back to basics. We've just forgotten how to be people. Like
exactly.
You said, like, everyone's responsible. It's not on HR to be responsible for people's strategy. We're all responsible for it.
We all are accountable. We need to be measured by it. It's just the challenge is to make it objective and not subjective. That's the challenge. So 100%. I'm so excited that we have all these experts here to help us figure that out. It's been phenomenal.
Well, I hope that everybody who's watching today, we'd love to keep hearing from you. Susan mentioned she's working on a bunch of global career ladder projects, and really, this is always just a discussion. I mean, none of us have the secret key, and so I personally love hearing from you all on the chat about your challenges or tips and tricks that you're learning, or new things that you're finding, and that's how we all get better. And so anyway, so I just hope the conversation continues. We'd love to hear from you all even after the forum today. So please be in touch with us as to what you're doing, what your challenges are, what you're finding is working, so we can all get better together.
Great time to practice your communication skills with us. So
Right.
throw it in
And,
there.
and share these events too with
That's
all
right.
your friends, colleagues, and professional partners on all of our platforms.
Yeah, we are here. You're all here to learn. So I think that was a good point Wendy brought up. If you have a project and you just want a sounding board, or if you are, we're here to share our experience, and we'd love to hear your perspective as well. So it'd be great. We can all benefit together.
Great.
100%. Thank you again, everyone. It was a great, energetic, dynamic discussion, and we'll see you next week.
All right.
We'll see you next week.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thanks for coming.
Bye. Thank you.